we're honored to have Rabbi Steinsaltz's son in honor of Rabbi Steinsaltz's father, Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz Even-Israel, in honor of his 83rd birthday today. I'll mention before you begin, Rabbi Meni, that you're giving us a glimpse into what Rabbi Steinsaltz would do, right? And please correct me if I'm wrong. Each and every birthday, he would conclude the entire Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud, each and every birthday, which meant that he learned countless volumes of both the Babylonian Talmud and Jerusalem Talmud in just a year, each and every year. An impossible feat by an impossible man. But Rabbi Meni here is continuing on the legacy of his father, and will share with us also some words of the Talmud and maybe a few words about your father in honor of his 83rd birthday today. B'chavod, Rabbi Meni.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Rabbi Lush. Let me start, first of all, that I'm not like my father, and I did not complete the Talmud this year, or the Talmud Yerushalmi, near the Bavli. Either one of those I kept in the minimum possible. So the minimum possible is tractate called Tractate Tamid. Tractate Tamid is the shortest tractate in the Talmud, 8 pages. Out of those 8 pages, 4 are Mishnaic texts, which means make it easier, but it's outstanding material, and the combination of text and information there is really outstanding. One of the things they have, the end of this tractate deals directly with the song of the day, right? We just say the song of the Friday, and the end of the tractate is actually describe what the Levites used to sing every day. That was the only really non-constant text and song that they used, because all the other stuff was regular, where they had a very direct set order, what they say and how they say. The song of the day was the only thing was changed. Obviously, it was a song of the month, also a song for the holidays, but in general, that was a regular change. Anyway, that's the end of the tractate. However, that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is something completely different. So one of the most fascinating stories in this tractate is the story of one of the most famous high priests we have, Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik was what we know about him. In the ethics of our fathers, that Shimon was one of the Shiarei Knesset HaGdolah. He was the members of the old assembly. He was very, very important high priest, and he commanded a lot of power. One of the stories about him is that there was a threat coming to the land of Israel from Alexander the Great, Alexander Mokdon. And in order to appease him and not to be afraid, and to make sure that he will not do any damage to the small and almost newly created country, they sent a high priest who was very impressive to go and greet him. And when he went to greet Alexander the Great, Alexander went down from his horse and bowed to him. And his soldiers said, "What are you doing, sir? You are the top leader." And Alexander the Great was absolutely outstanding conqueror and a leader. And he said, "This is the man that when I know I'm going to win a war, I see his image before me. Of course, you can say that other religions took these stories and duplicated later, but we're going to skip it. However, the Gemara asked a very bizarre question. Gemara asked, this is the question we ask here from this tractate Tanit. Gemara said, wait a minute. It says in the description of the story that Shimon the Pious, Shimon HaTzadik, left the temple wearing the high priest's clothing. And we know there's a prohibition for the high priest to leave the temple with this clothing. So how can Rabbi Shimon does it? That's the question they ask. It's a very specific question. We know it's very holy clothing, which the Talmud discussed for a page and a half before. How can Shimon the Pious, who was clearly knew what he's doing, can leave the temple to greet, God forbid, a foreign king with wearing this holy of holy clothes? So I'm going to put that in the question mark, and I'll go to the deep part of the conversation. Everybody knows that next week we're going to have Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the day that the rabbis institute as a day of mourning and commemorating the destruction of the temples. destruction of the Luchot, and there's a whole list of things that happened in Tisha B'Av, including the expulsion of Jews from both England on the 9th of Av and France on the 10th of Av. There's a whole list of other things that allegedly happened on this day. Some of them are more terrible than others. But one of the most famous stories is the story about Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. It's a story of the two ex-friends, mortal enemies, two gentlemen by the name Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. One day there was a big meal, and all the sages and all the scholars and all the rabbis and all the priests and all the Levites of the city were invited. And the guy who did the invitation, he told his secretary to invite Kamsa. His secretary, from whatever reason, we don't know till today why, misunderstood the request and invited Bar Kamsa to come. Now, apparently, this guy, Bar Kamsa, was a mortal enemy of the Baal Bayit, of the owner of this meal, of this festive meal. And when Kamsa came in, the person who celebrated, the master of the ceremony, got so upset the guy is there, he picked up a fight with him, started fighting with him and arguing, get out, I don't need you here, you're destroying the harmony, leave me alone. But Kamsa was so ashamed and so afraid, he said, look, I will pay for my meal. He said, no, I've set up my money, leave. I will pay half of all the cost of the meal. He said, no, leave, I don't want you. I'll pay everything. He said, leave, I don't want to see you here, leave. But Kamsa got so hurt, said, and he looked left, he looked right, you see that all the priests and all the rabbis and all the scholars and all the sages, everybody who's sitting there did not say a word when he saw a fellow person being embarrassed in that level. Said, I'm going to take revenge of them. I'm going to go and take revenge of them. I'll make sure they're all going to suffer. What he did, according to the legend, he went to the local Roman prefect, which was definitely not a nice man. He told them, you know what, these Jews, as much as they respect you officially, they really, when it comes to the really truth, to the inside, whatever is matter, they really hate you. He said, God forbid, that's impossible. I just had a meal with the high priest, I had a meal with this guy, I had a meal with that guy, I know everybody, they invite me to the bar mitzvahs, weddings, even circumcision I'm invited. How can you say that they hate me? He said, look, it's very simple. You bring a sacrifice to the temple, you will see they will never sacrifice it. So that's what happened the next week, whenever the prefect had time, he brought this amazing calf to be sacrificed in the temple. We know that in our temple, one of the most impressive lines are that my house is the house of prayers of all the nations. My house is the house of prayer for everybody. So everybody can bring sacrifice, like everybody can pray. Even though non-Jews were not allowed after certain point in Temple Mount, but definitely everybody was welcome. In a sense of that, if you brought a gift, the temple will receive it. You'll be acknowledged. Bar Kamsa was also a conniving young man, or maybe older man, made sure that when the calf is leaving the prefect's hands, by the time he gets to the priest to inspect every animal, he will blemish it. Will make something, some kind of a damage that the animals, by strict halacha, cannot be used. The animal cannot be sacrificed according to Allah if it has one of the 22 blemishes. And some of them are very simple, like he has a mark on his eye, he has a torn lip, a broken nose. These small things that, for us, maybe not as important, but when you give a sacrifice to God, you need to be completely blemishless. So Bar Kamsa managed to do that. Now, normally, under normal circumstances, obviously, when you see the situation, right, you know that this sacrifice comes from the prefect. And you know that there's already tension between the Jewish nation and the Roman. So what do? You're supposed to be creative. You're supposed to be open-minded. You're supposed to take halachic decision that called hora'at sha'ah. It's a temporary decision that you can make in order to change a regular law, in order to prevent or to create a situation that you can help many more people. Over here was truly one of those cases. It was very obvious that if you're not going to sacrifice this animal, only bad going to happen. Only bad going to happen. However, and that's the point of my story, the Cohen / scholar who was in charge was known to make everything by the law and everything strict and everything the way it's supposed to be, and no flexibility whatsoever. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the head of the Sanhedrin and became the head of the community, one of the sole survivors of the destruction of the temple, said the following line: that Jerusalem was destroyed not because of what we say, ahavat sinat chinam, hating each other for no reason, or because idol worship, or because one of the reasons, that it was really destroyed because they were very strict, they were very stringent about rules, that sometimes you have to know when to be flexible with them. Doesn't mean God forbid to change, God forbid halacha, but it's to understand the situation, understand what you're standing, and answer the question in the proper way. But this rabbi, that particular scholar who was there, I forgot his name, said, I will keep the word the way it's supposed to be, and I will not let you sacrifice him. That was an error on his side, and that error caused us, at least according to Rabbi Yochanan and others, destruction of the temple. If they will follow what happened 200 years later with Rabbi Shimon, the high priest as just described before, when he went out with the priestly clothing, he did it for exactly the same reason. He made a momentary decision that even though the Torah said you're not allowed to leave the temple as a high priest, and you're not allowed to leave with the high priest's clothing, he understood that the benefits for the entire Jewish people, if he will make one momentarily, one not permanent, but temporary decision, that will save the people. That is the lesson we have for the Shabbat. From now to the Shabbat and also after, we have to be flexible. Even when we see things around us that are not what we used to. Maybe things are not the way it used to be. We used to go to shul. We used to go to synagogue every Shabbat. And now we don't. We have to be flexible about it. We have to feel how we can make the best out of it. That is the lesson. My father, that's just for you, Rabbi Lush. My father taught me many lessons, clearly. I mean, I grew up in his house, and as he's 7 years apart between my brother and my sister, I had a lot of private time, personal time of education, which some of the stuff I did follow, some of the stuff I imitated Hashem one day. So one thing is, I asked my father on his 70th birthday, what do I have to learn? What is the things, what is the basic things I have to go through in order to be accomplished Jewish person? He said, there's only 4 books you have to go through, really not a big deal. Bible, Talmud, Zohar, and Shulchan Aruch. It's only 4 books. Why is it a big deal? That was one thing he said. But again, that wasn't the lesson. That was more of an order. The only thing he said to me when a very, very young age was, always have the ability to use your imagination and the ability to pursue your dreams. Never be content with what we have. You always have to do more. Constantly, day after moment, you have to do it again and again and again. You have to move to one dream to the next dream. From one dream to another, never to stop. And that's a lesson that is extremely important, especially in these days, that we are limited by what our regular things are. And we still have the ability to create a vision, ability to create a dream, to move them forward, to make sure that we never stop, we never cease in one place. We always have to move forward. I think that is one of the most, if not the most important lesson I have learned from my father. So, in that particular note, I wish all of us that we be able to move forward and try to create as most amazing dreams as we can, to develop them, to fulfill them, and to make sure that the biggest dream we have, the biggest vision we have of rebuilding of the temple, whatever that means, and the coming of Mashiach will happen before Tisha B'Av. Have a marvelous day and a Shabbat Shalom.
Amen.
Amen. Yasher Koach. Thank you, Rabbi.
Please, if you can, on behalf of all of us here, all of us in our congregation, all of us in Arizona and beyond, please send your father our warmest wishes for a happy birthday. May Hashem bless him with a full and speedy recovery. May he speak again fully and may He restore his ability to ride also, and really to give him the full strength that he needs so that he can continue to lead us and the Jewish people and the world until 120 and beyond.